Spotlight on America presents.
They're killing our veterans. They're killing our active duty military firefighters.
A firefighting foam used by the military made with chemicals that can cause cancer. We explore the devastating toll.
I'm sorry I had to lose my life this way.
Heavy metals in baby food.
No mother wants to be knowingly feeding her child food that is laced with heavy metals.
Why the federal government is offering potentially harmful baby food products to tens of millions of low-income families.
It is unfair, is unjust.
What we found is triggering new action in Congress. And it's been about 1 year since the attack on the U.S. Capitol. We meet two police officers who were there that day.
January 6th just was one of the saddest and most traumatic moments of my career.
Whose passion for art is helping them to heal. Imagine learning that your job exposed you directly to hazardous chemicals that could potentially threaten your life. That's exactly what's happened to military firefighters nationwide. For decades, they were told that a special firefighting foam that they used to douse flames was nothing more than soap and water. But it turns out that foam is made with a set of man-made chemicals we now know can cause cancer. We've been reporting for years on how those chemicals have been leaking into the groundwater at U.S. bases, endangering surrounding communities and even threatening our food supply. Now you're about to meet a former military firefighter who says these toxins have destroyed his health.
Hey, if you want to rock.
Dan Kaysen has had a guitar in his hand since he was 5 years old. Now, at the age of 72, when he starts playing, you can still see the spark of who he was in his youth. As a young man, his talent took him to stages across the country and even put him on national TV a few times in the 70s. His guitar, he told us, was once his ticket to the world. Now it brings him an escape. You're in a lot of pain. You're dealing with all these things that are going on. What kind of a difference does it make to pick up the guitar and play?
Oh, it puts me in another world.
His world now is confined mostly to this small apartment in Florida, not far from his family. He's battling terminal cancer and receiving hospice care at home.
It's my choice that I can either be grumpy and bad and screaming and blame the world, or I can be content and be happy, and I'm doing my best. It's hard. I got a lot of cancers.
Kaysen told us he's been diagnosed with several types of cancer, and he traces the roots of his illness back to the turn his life took when he gave up music. In 1975, Kaysen, the young man you see in this photograph, joined the Air Force as a firefighter working in crash rescue. It's a dangerous job, one that he says sent him running again and again into burning airplanes, as his fellow firefighters doused the flames with gallons and gallons of a substance known as AFFF, Aqueous film-forming foam. It's a fire suppressant created specifically for the military, for this kind of job.
We asked them, what is this spray, this foam, when we first started. All of us did in our class, and we were all told, it's just soap suds. That's all it is soap suds. And that's what they told firefighters for years. For years.
That was nearly 50 years ago, but we now know AFFF is more than soap suds. It contains a toxic set of man-made chemicals known as PFAS. Studies show these chemicals have a link to cancer and other health problems. But the military admits it continues to use this hazardous foam, many years after learning about the potential risks to people like Dan Kaysen, who started speaking out after making the connection between his own cancer and the PFAS exposure he received on the job. Why is it so important?
Because they lied to us. They lied to every firefighter.
Are you angry?
No, I'm not angry. I'm disgusted. disgusted. Many, many moons ago, they knew.
What would you say to the leadership in the military that are not acknowledging this problem and that it's made people sick?
You're a fool. You're a fool. And anyone who denies this, you're a fool. Because it's real. I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one.
Firefighters are sick, they're developing cancer, other medical illnesses, and firefighters at the end of the day, we just want answers.
Kevin Ferrara is fighting for those answers on behalf of Dan Kaysen and his other fellow service members. He retired after serving 20 years in the Air Force, where he rose as high as Command Deputy Fire Chief at Air Combat Command Headquarters in Virginia. But after decades of putting out fires for the military, Ferrara started traveling the country to deliver urgent warnings about that firefighting foam he and others once handled daily.
They found AFFF as toxic. We were never told.
Ferrara says just like Dan Kaysen, many current and retired first responders had no idea the foam they used to help save lives may have put them at risk of losing their own. And you call yourself a whistleblower at this point. Why have you been so public about this?
That's where I get emotional. Sorry. Firefighting is a brotherhood, and we protect each other's backs. I'll go to bat for anybody, especially my fellow firefighters, my fellow veterans. They deserve it.
Ferrara believes they deserve to know that the military was concerned about the health impacts of PFAS foam long before it took action. He showed Spotlight on America unclassified records and emails he saved over the years that showed leadership in the Air Force had concerns about PFAS in AFFF as far back as 2013, with a presentation given at one base acknowledging these chemicals may pose risks to human health. Documents uncovered by Spotlight on America show the DoD was aware these chemicals were potentially hazardous even earlier, with the DoD's own Inspector General revealing that in 2011, PFAS was added to a watch list of chemicals the military was concerned about. But despite their growing awareness, it still took the military until 2016 to take what it called aggressive steps to manage PFAS-related risks. What makes the biggest statement out of all of these messages and reports?
Fire emergency service leadership had some sort of intel as to AFFF and its toxicity. There was environmental concerns, and we were just left in the dark up until really 15, 16 when I started swapping it out. But again, they never come out and full disclosure said, hey, AFFF, the stuff that we're using today, is toxic. It'll impact your health.
They have failed you. Is that how you see it?
Absolutely. I mean, they have failed on so many levels to protect the protectors, and they won't acknowledge it.
Congress is now leaving the military no choice. Defense Department officials who've repeatedly denied our interview requests and have declined to answer questions we've put in writing recently went head-to-head with Senate lawmakers on Capitol Hill. Deputy Assistant Secretary Richard Kidd downplayed the military's early knowledge of the potential dangers of PFAS.
Sir, the Department of Defense learned about the health hazards posed by PFAS basically at the same pace as the rest of America.
Kidd couldn't provide specifics on how many military firefighters across America may have health problems related to PFAS exposure.
It is still unclear what exposures and at what levels result in adverse health effects.
Last year, the Defense Department was forced by Congress to start blood testing active firefighters during their annual physicals to measure PFAS exposure levels. Some government studies have already documented higher levels in firefighters who use the PFAS-containing foam. But the DoD's own Inspector General recently scolded the military for not adequately tracking and analyzing its own testing. And veterans, we've learned, likely can't even get these tests because the VA's website says it doesn't recommend them to determine PFAS levels. The VA told us it is unclear what the results mean in terms of possible health effects.
It sounds like to me that VA website is out of date, and they need to get up to date with the science and up to date with the healthcare protocols and protect our veterans.
New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand has been one of the most outspoken voices in the nation when it comes to protecting service members from PFAS. In an exclusive interview, she told us the military needs to be held accountable for the damage it's done.
The Veterans Administration and the Department of Defense don't always want to pay for the health care effects of the cost of war or crises they create. And you mandated this, and you didn't know it was a cancer-causing foam, but it is. So you have to protect these service members and these veterans. You have to pay for their health care.
Does that frustrate you that you have to compel them to action all the time when this seems like their responsibility?
Well, that's been part of my job description for the last 10 years, really pushing these issues so that the DoD can be held accountable on behalf of service members. And this is something that the DoD owes to its country, but also to the service members themselves.
Service members like Dan Kaysen and Kevin Ferrara. Gillibrand is their voice on Capitol Hill. But she's also fighting for thousands of others who may not yet have made the potential connection between their health problems and their exposure to PFAS.
It makes perfect sense that with the level of exposure our service members have had over so many decades, that there are many service members and veterans who are perhaps suffering from cancers and other diseases caused by that exposure to PFAS. And so hopefully they see this show, hopefully they can begin to put two and two together and say, this exposure may well be the source of this illness that I have today, and will seek appropriate care and compensation for their health care needs.
Getting that care and compensation can be a battle. It was for Dan Kaysen. He showed us years' worth of records he compiled in his fight to prove a link between his exposure to PFAS foam and cancer. Kaysen's doctors ultimately determined that the evidence in his case indicates the foam he practically bathed in during the mid-1970s is the likely cause of his cancers. How big of a task was it to prove this?
I don't know how I did it. If you want to call it a gift from God, I'll take it.
In 2019, that gift came in the form of this letter from the Veterans Administration. The VA formally agreed that Kaysen's cancers were incurred in service and awarded him 100% disability. Other military firefighters, we're told, are now using his case as an example in their own fight to prove a link between health problems and toxic PFAS foam. Is this letter your legacy?
Never thought of it. I was really proud when that came in the mail. I'm sorry I'm crying. Yeah, this is wonderful. But there's a lot of men and women I know that they're going to live. I'm going to die, but they're going to live, and for years to come. And I'm proud of that.
I'm Lisa Fletcher. It's a stunning reality for families. The jars, pouches, and boxes that line grocery store shelves may contain the same harmful heavy metals banned from paint and found in pesticides. Lead, arsenic, mercury, all discovered in popular baby foods.
No mother wants to be knowingly feeding her child food that is laced with heavy metals. But unfortunately, that's what we're doing. You swinging?
Trisha Dello Iacono is a mother of 4 and a clean food activist. She told us millions of moms are feeding their kids tainted food because the FDA has failed to properly police the baby food industry for years. 2 explosive congressional reports released in 2021 detailed alarming levels of heavy metals in many top brands.
Moms are exhausted. We want answers as to why lead is being removed in our gasoline that we put in our cars, but not our baby food.
Spotlight on America has been pressing for answers for years. Now, there's a new concern. We've discovered that many of these potentially dangerous products are still being offered to tens of millions of low-income families who rely on the government for vouchers to help buy food every month through a program called WIC, short for Women, Infants, and Children.
You are passionate and angry about contaminants being in baby food. How much worse does it get for you when you find out it's in the WIC program?
It's devastating because the numbers that you hear these days about, the illnesses that are going around is affecting disproportionately the families that are economically disadvantaged. And they also happen to get the foods with the heaviest loads of heavy metals. It is unfair, is unjust.
Pediatrician Anna Maria Temple says the WIC program, run by the USDA, is failing in its mission to safeguard the health of low-income families by offering up foods known to potentially contain heavy metals without even a warning.
How can we know that these are contaminated and then still be offering them to parents without even a disclaimer?
And they're depending on a establishment that should have vetted the product. I mean, if I go into WIC as a mom, I'm thinking, okay, well, this was actually cleared by, I'm hoping, physicians. But as a parent, you hope somebody's guiding you. I mean, when did parenthood become, now we have a nutritional degree, now we have a chemical engineering degree, an MD degree, don't forget that.
Spotlight on America went state by state, examining each WIC program's shopping list, and found the variety of clean options depend on where you live. In Ohio, parents can only buy Gerber products, one of the brands called out by Congress for heavy metal contamination. But in California, there's more than a dozen brands to choose from. One of the most common baby foods known to be consistently contaminated with arsenic is rice cereal. We found only 3 states, Alaska, Hawaii, and Oregon, have removed all types of rice cereal from approved shopping lists. Even Gerber's organic rice cereal, specifically called dangerous by Congress, remains on the WIC list in multiple states.
Why are we 50 little countries? Every day I'm kind of like, I don't understand. Why are the rules different in North Carolina than South Carolina? That doesn't even make sense. Having a general idea and general expectation across the country will then help the states that are struggling rise, and so we can all be on a same level playing field.
The USDA refused to speak with us on camera about this issue, including who's responsible for removing potentially dangerous baby foods from approved WIC lists. So, we brought what we found to Illinois Representative Raja Krishnamurthy, one of the most vocal lawmakers on the issue when it comes to tainted baby food.
You would not believe how many of the foods you identified in your report as potentially toxic or toxic are on the lists for parents to choose from through the WIC program. And we're talking about the most vulnerable families and the most vulnerable kids in the United States.
Yeah, it's really constraining if you're one of those parents on that program and you can only choose from foods that might be toxic to your children. What do you do? And unfortunately, there were 2 assumptions that we made about baby food. One is that no company would sell any unsafe food for babies, and 2, that the federal government would regulate this area very closely. And unfortunately, neither of those assumptions is correct.
Do you think the WIC program should take heavy metals into account when they're making these lists?
I think so.
Within weeks of our interview, Congressman Krishnamurthy took action. He asked the USDA to take steps immediately to protect babies by removing rice cereal from all WIC shopping lists, promoting more variety in what's available, and quickly providing him with a detailed briefing of their progress.
Some members of Congress will take up an issue and then do what they can and move on. And that's clearly not what you're doing here. You've taken this up and you're doggedly holding on to it.
Oh, yeah.
How long are you going to hold on to this?
Until we resolve it. It's just that important because our babies and our children, they don't give campaign contributions. They don't vote. We have to be the ones that speak out for them. We have to be the ones that take care of them and be their voice in Congress.
I'm Jay Korf. For any artist, the space where form and feeling take shape
working on her fluffy, fluffy ears at the moment.
Serves as a sanctuary of sorts from all the noise cluttering our lives.
And I can just not really worry about the rest of the world. When I'm at work, I have to worry a little bit more.
For Morgan Archer, a trained graphic artist, and Winston Pejan, an accomplished painter,
I'm using a cobalt blue for the sky, which is one of my favorites.
this protective cocoon, be it along a sun-soaked river or inside a cozy studio, provides the shelter necessary from 9-to-5 jobs that are hardly routine.
Some people are surprised to know that I'm also a police officer.
Pejan's calming watercolor landscapes and Archer's intimate, photorealistic colored pencil portraits stand in stark contrast to their work in law enforcement and the day that changed everything.
On January 6th, I was assigned to our civil disturbance unit in full riot gear.
Pull them this way! Pull them forward!
When a barbaric surge pushed deep into our nation's seat of law and order, U.S. Capitol Police officers Winston Pejan and Morgan Archer stood their ground.
My squad was one of the first squads on the West Front, so as soon as those people took the stairs, they were faced with us. We were that line to stop them.
Someone hit Officer Archer with bear spray.
It almost incapacitated me. I couldn't breathe. I actually had one of my coworkers pull me up the steps because I almost passed out from not being able to breathe through it.
They hit Officer Pejan with even more.
Tried to be stabbed with flagpoles. I was punched in the face and beaten, pepper sprayed. January 6th just was one of the saddest and most traumatic moments of my career, and perhaps my life too.
Months later, Pejan began creating striking images. His fellow officers defending democracy in the face of impending danger. The Weeping Peace Monument nestled between the U.S. Capitol and barbed wire fencing, along with 2 self-portraits. Officer Pejan donned in riot gear only hours after the insurrection ended, bewildered and grateful just to be alive, and him saluting in his ceremonial uniform 2 weeks later on Inauguration Day.
It was a traumatic day for myself and for a lot of my fellow officers, and so to try and capture some of that sadness and that grief and put it into my artwork has been really important for me.
Pencils are they're easy to put in my hand and work with.
Officer Archer has also poured herself into her craft.
Being a law enforcement officer and then being able to go home and sit down and do this, it's a huge contrast, and I never realized how important it was in my life, because it's needed.
Showcasing how different creatures connect with each other and how maybe we can learn from them.
I want people, when they look at my stuff, to feel something.
These artists credit the quiet comfort of their respective studios.
We are in the Yards Park, just about a mile south of the Capitol.
With helping them heal from a domestic uprising that continues to haunt and shape a nation.
My intention is not to make a political statement at all. It's just to tell my story and share my experience.